The Jewish hearers in the beginning would say, oh, hold on. Yahweh gave his people a stone when they were thirsty. Yahweh sent snakes when his people were hungry. And here's Jesus saying, what kind of father would do that?
Do that. Right.
All the gospel writers in the canonical gospels I'm talking about are eager to show that Jesus is a successor to and replacement of Moses, the prophet of
Hmm.
Yahweh. And they show him as bringing laws that delete and replace the laws of Yahweh. That's really the big picture. It's a picture of discontinuity. And so I go further than this in my book, The Eden Conspiracy in particular. And I show that Jesus really did intend to set people free from the laws of Yahweh and was bringing something very different. The gospel writers understood it. There's the moment of transfiguration where we've even got a dramatic handover of the baton, where those of his ancestors who had to do business with Yahweh, that's Moses and Elijah, are handing the baton over to Jesus, and a voice from the heavens, there's the Father in the heavens, speaks and says, this is my son, listen to him. And so in that moment, we've gone from the old to the new, and the new is something completely new. So it's very clear by the time you're in the book of Acts, in Acts 15, and the Jerusalem Council is happening, the early church has worked out Christianity is not Yahwism. There's clear blue water between what Jesus was on about and all the old stories and laws of Yahweh. It's very hard to get that discontinuity into our minds when we've been taught a story of continuity for so long. But the only way the story of continuity works is if you ignore all the nastiness and violence of the Yahweh character that are totally incompatible with the
Right.
teachings of Jesus. And that's the clue for most people that something's awry.
I've never really sat and thought about that. I've always said like, well, I'm not a real big fan of the Old Testament, fire and brimstone,
Yes.
punishment kind of God, or the use the term God for lack of a better word. But in the New Testament, the God that Jesus speaks of is extremely different, or the Father that Jesus speaks of. It seems extreme night and day. It's like if you're writing a story or a novel, um, the character changes of Yahweh changes so dramatically between the first part and the second part. It's like if Darth Vader was Darth Vader in the first part of the Old Testament, and in the New Testament, he's a dancer who loves to paint and is very kind to
Yes.
people using the Force. That's essentially the dichotomy we got here with Yahweh. But that's really interesting. And the funny thing is the work that you do and so many others like you in the world who are trying to bring this truth out, it's right in front of our eyes. This is not like we could talk about the things that have been discovered, the Dead Sea Scrolls, other texts and gospels, but just looking at it from what we have right now, that is considered canon, if you will, of Christianity, it doesn't add up, hasn't added up ever if you look at it with a critical eye or even a questioning eye. Just ask basic questions. There's so many holes in the plot, so many
That's
character
right.
holes. It's crazy.
But there's a great problem in what happens when you ask basic questions. And my inbox is full from week to week of messages from people who grew up in church, grew up in
Mhm.
Sunday school, and who got thrown out of Sunday school for asking obvious questions. How does
Yes.
God do such awful, violent, wicked things? We know they're wicked because we know the teaching of Jesus. We know they're wicked because we've got a basic conscience. How can we be higher than the morality of this God character? Children have their own ways of asking those questions, which are obvious questions, and then they get thrown out because the Sunday school teacher or the Bible study leader can't answer. And I'm not talking about this happening to people 100 years ago. I'm talking about people my age and younger who've been thrown out of groups, not because they're being disruptive, but because they're asking obvious questions to which there are obvious answers, but people don't want to give the obvious answers.